Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is my end of month recap video for April 2022. I have lots of things to share with you this month actually. I had a bit of an influx of decks arriving. Not entirely really planned that way, but just, when you back on Kickstarter or pre-order things, they kind of show up when they show up to at least a certain extent. So I have some decks to share with you, including the ones I've been working with the most this month as well. Lots of books to share, lots to say about this month's animal, which was Raven, and some plans for reading for May for a readathon. Lots of exciting things. I will timestamp below as always, but before I get into the decks and that, just kind of general life updates, I guess. April, at the beginning of the month, my classes that I was teaching ended in terms of their last sessions. And so April is, for us, really exam month. So both of my classes had exams, so I've been grading. For the most part, I've been grading exams, grading the last few late essays, and also dealing with all of the kind of administrative duties that are involved in wrapping up a university course, so kind of tabulating final grades for transcripts and making sure everything is where it needs to be on time and so on. So I've been working a lot in April. My second job has also been quite busy. We've been doing a couple of committees that are not always super active, but have been in the past month. So it's been a very Zoom heavy month, and just a lot of grading and a lot of reading. I'm kind of surprised that I read as many books this month as I did. Mostly it's because two of them were really, really short. Most of my reading was, in fact, student work. So I'm happy now that the semester is completely over for me as I'm filming this on the last day of April. All of my grades are in, everything is done, so I can kind of relax a little bit in terms of my more full-time job, closer to full-time. It's not full-time. My more demanding of the two jobs being wrapped up for now. I also just finished attending a 3-day convention all on Zoom for my second job. So I've spent the last 3 days, yesterday and the 2 days prior, on Zoom 6 to 8 hours a day, voting on resolutions and listening to speakers and all this kind of union business when the provincial convention happens. So I'm glad to have that finished, though it was good. It's always good, but it's nice to have that finished. I'm looking forward to this weekend doing some yard work, some gardening. We're building a new garden in our backyard, digging out a part of our lawn to end up having a garden full of flowers and maybe some food as well. I'm looking at bird baths for the backyard. I would like to get a bird bath. And so this afternoon, actually, my partner is outside digging the kind of border of what will be the garden, and we're going to put kind of bricks in to be the outline of the garden, and it meets up with a garden on my neighbor's side of the little fence between our yards. So we're doing the outline today, and we'll fill it with dirt probably tomorrow. And so it's been really nice to start thinking about that and to be outside more this month, especially amidst all of the Zoom and amidst all of the work. It's been really nice to finally here in Ontario have weather that is sandal friendly, have weather that I can actually sit outside with a book and enjoy a drink and relax a little bit. Most days have been a bit too chilly for that still, but we've been doing more barbecuing and just spending more time outside, which has been great. When I haven't been outside on a rainy day, I've been watching a little bit of television, which I don't usually watch much television. I never include television in these updates for the most part because I never really have anything to share. It's like, yeah, I'm still watching that show that I've been watching for 3 months because I watch so little. So I never put TV in my general updates really, but this month I have a television update because through the month of April, we watched the entire first season, which is 10 episodes, of Our Flag Means Death. And if you haven't heard of Our Flag Means Death, go watch the trailer. It is a comedic, historical pirate show. And it, I think, handles queer representation really well in ways that I really appreciated. And I appreciate a lot about it. So I definitely recommend checking it out. Comedy and is not really my genre of television, like not even a little bit. It's probably the furthest from my usual go-to genres of television. I wouldn't say period is a genre that I usually go towards either. But this was really fun, and I am really, really hoping that it gets a second season. I need some plot lines wrapped up. I'm not going to give any spoilers beyond that, but I liked it so much. So if you haven't seen Our Flag Means Death and are interested in a pirate comedy, do check it out. Definitely recommend. It is great in so many ways. So that has been my April. I'm really looking forward to, tomorrow's May Day, International Workers' Day. So that is a special day for me for a number of reasons, both kind of spiritually and politically, not that those things are separate. So I'll be, I think, at some May Day activities safely outdoors and also be, just observing the middle of the springtime that is coming up. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Going on to decks I've received this month. I actually received 4 decks this month. That's a lot of decks received this month. So I'll show you the 4 decks that I got. One of them just arrived, so I actually haven't even taken it out of the plastic. I have nothing to show you in that respect. I got the Trionfi della Luna Illustrated Pips edition, which, as folks I'm sure will know, was released without Patrick Valenza revealing what any of these pips would look like. I do already have the Trionfi della Luna, the Marseille version, in the Paradoxical. And I like the Paradoxical, but I've been thinking of getting I guess this would be classic coloration. But then I was kind of thinking, well, that's like getting 2 decks that are almost the same, just the color's different. Do I really want to do that? Do I really need to do that? And I kind of had landed on no. And then this project was announced, and I thought, oh, well, that's perfect. That's a way to have the classic coloration of the Trionfi della Luna and have it be a little bit different. So I have resisted watching other people's videos about this deck. I know some people have this ahead of me. I know Anna at Astro Lady Tarot has her copy, and this is the Paradoxical is her favorite deck, or one of her favorite decks. I have resisted. I will watch that unboxing, but I've resisted looking because I don't want to see. So I've seen precisely one minor, and it's the minor that's on the back of the box. I'm going to turn it around and show you. So if you don't want to spoiler at all, skip this next little bit. The back of the box depicts the 3 of Cups, and one of the figures in the 3 of Cups is farting flames. So this deck is already, like, we've already laughed about this. This deck is already the deck that Chris, my partner, is going to want readings with, just based on fart humor. When I've read for Chris, otherwise it's been with the Deviant Moon. That's the one that is always picked. But this one I think is going to be a contender for Chris's favorite. Chris is not into tarot at all, but will accept the occasional reading on birthdays and things, and I think that this is going to be one. So I'm excited to unpack this. It also came with the sample card of the Witch, which is, I think, for the upcoming Deviant Moon Oracle that is going to be mass market with US Games that is not out yet. So that's cool. It's very much in the style of Deviant Moon, which is a deck that I really like. So I'm excited about this. I haven't opened it. I'm excited to see it. I've so far restrained myself. I've got a busy weekend, so I don't know when it's going to be, but I'm excited for that. I also received this little baby, Druid Wisdom, and this is by Andres Ingracia. And Andre Ingracia is also the creator of the Divine Doors, which I don't have, but is another one of these little rock pool decks. And so I have been looking a little bit at his work, and I'm a little bit interested in Divine Doors too. But I pre-ordered this as soon as I saw it on my local bookstore's website, without really seeing anything about what it would be like. I just saw Druid and knew that it was one of these small ones, and I was like, I'm a Druid and I love small decks. I'm gonna order it because I love my little Whispering Woods, which I take with me camping. This is out because I was edging it the other day. And I like to take this camping because when I go camping, I might be carrying my stuff for quite a ways. If we do like a multi-day trek where we're camping in different places each night, or if we're just walking like a ways in to get well away from the car, if we're camping on kind of public land that's not sites. So space and weight are very limited. I can't bring a lot of extras, and so these decks are really great for that. Maybe I'll make a video dedicated to this deck. I know my friend Kelly at The Truth and Story has done a little look at this deck, and maybe I'll make one too. The more the merrier about accounts of decks. But this little deck has scenery from Scotland, I think, and Wales, and Ireland, and England. And then on the back, it has these little messages here. Like this one has a nice little rhyming kind of message there. And then it has a suggestion here. So this one says pine for protection and peace. And so each card has that landscape or nature scene and the same kind of a message on the back and a suggestion. Some of them are horizontal, like this one of Stonehenge. And I'm really happy with this little one. I just got it, so I haven't spent a ton of time with it. But I love seeing the different locations. And I really like the little messages on the back. I mean, a lot of them are things like, carrying a particular crystal, most of which I do not have. But I can still work with kind of the spirit of the message and the spirit that the message is offered in without necessarily doing, precisely exactly the message, right? So like this card, for example, talks about carrying seraphinite, which is a crystal, to help guide you and contact nature spirits. Now, I don't have that crystal, but I could accept the message of, connecting to nature and do that in a way that makes sense for me and my practice and my cosmology. So that's a deck that I've been enjoying looking at. So maybe you'll see a video from me about this one soon. We'll see. But I really like these little decks. The other one is the only one that I've ever had, but now I have two, and I'm really excited to have this little Druid deck. Also arriving this month, very recently, quite a bit after its release date, actually. Mine was quite a bit later than some of my pals in the United States were getting theirs. I got the Woodland Wardens Oracle by Jessica Rue. And this one, the back of the box says, it is inspired by history, folklore, and mythology. Jessica Rue's debut Oracle deck. And each card, I'm sure folks have seen this deck, because again, like other folks have had this deck for a while, and mine just turned up. It's still in order. Each card, this is the back. It's kind of green and gold pattern. Each card has a animal and a plant. So here we see the mouse and buttercup and a keyword. So innocence. The cat and lavender, independence. Cat and independence certainly makes sense. And this one is almost a mix of my two cats, Daryl and Bandit, which is kind of fun. The spider and passion flower, creative ingenuity. So you get the idea. It's a very cool illustration style. They remind me a little bit of kind of Aesop fable type illustrations that you might see in an older animal fable book, which is a style that I appreciate. After I'd seen it online, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to trim that. But now that I have it, I think I'm actually just not going to bother. Though I may edge this. I'm keen to see somebody else edge it before I do, because the fronts are so white. But a green and gold would be so good, right? So I started like looking a little bit at this one and enjoying the guidebook. The guidebook gets into why each animal and plant were chosen, which is exactly what I want in a guidebook for an oracle like this. I want to know why lavender is independence, for example, because most of the time it's not going to be obvious to me, particularly with the plants. So I am excited to get to know this one better. I imagine this will be a card of the day deck for a week or two in May, as I've been doing card of the day every morning. Sometimes it's staff of the day, but a message of some sort of the day every morning since December, which might be a record for me. The last deck that I received this month was a Kickstarter that I had backed some time ago, and that is the Hollow Valley Tarot by Erin Elise and Davis Carr. This deck I backed because I like that it's a little bit pippish. I like that there's a sigil component. I really like that there are a range, particularly of body sizes in this deck. This is a very cool one. I think this deck is a bit cooler than me, actually, if I'm honest. It feels cool to me. I really like black and white decks. People know that. There's a lot of personless cards, though certainly far from all. This is the back. And mine was a smidge late, this deck. I think one of mine got lost in the mail and they had to send a second one. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but the creators who I spoke to by email were very good and ensured that the deck did, in fact, reach me. So I was happy when it finally arrived. Oh, there's some nudity there. There's nudity in quite a few of these cards, but I really like the curvy body shapes in this deck. When I saw it, that was what made me want to back this deck. And I like that it has a kind of sketchbook quality, but botanical illustration kind of quality to it that I really like, and lots of kind of layers of symbols in the deck. So I have been working with this one. This one arrived a bit earlier in the month than the others, and I've been exploring this guidebook, which has quite a bit in it. It has a full-size representation of every card, and then a full page. And one of the creators, who I want to say is Davis, who wrote the book, has a strong background in astrology. So there is astrology correspondences provided for each of the cards as well. And I haven't read the book cover to cover, but so far the writing is really good. I really like the spirit of this. It feels politically liberatory in a way. It feels inclusive from what I've read. It feels supportive. I like this guidebook so far. And each card has a phrase of intention. So the sun is, I shine my authentic light, for example. The tower is, when everything changes, change everything. I really like this guidebook so far. Really cool. And I'm sure a video will come out detailing this deck and reviewing it more thoroughly. I'm not sure if that will be from me or from somebody else. But the book, has the suits in it and the numbers in it as well. It's good. It's really good, this guidebook. I don't read a ton of tarot guidebooks a lot of the time, but this one is so symbolism laden that I wanted to spend some time with it. I did also get another PDF in the Kickstarter for some of the symbolism details of the deck. So I've been enjoying exploring that very much. Those are the decks that I received this month. I've been working with the Hollow Valley a lot and really enjoying it so far. Other decks that I have worked with the most this month include The Oracle of Place by Kelly Fitzgerald of The Truth in Story. I actually got this, I'm not sure if it last month or the month before, but I had been waiting because I ordered, there's a guidebook you can order for this from Lulu. So I had been waiting for the paper copy of the guidebook. This is a deck that you can buy from Kelly, but you buy the files and you have to then upload the files to something like a Make Playing Cards yourself, and then you can print them. Which of course means if you wanted to, you could, for example, change, this is a kind of marbled back. You could change the back if you wanted to. This deck is based or inspired by a novel called The Highland Witch, which follows the character Corag. So that's what that's about. This is a really, really good deck. Kelly Fitzgerald created it. No surprise that it's a really great deck. This deck, for me, reads like a little bit druid, which I am all about. Really, really good. I love this deck. It also has some, I don't want to say, for lack of a better phrase, like expansion packs that you could work with together or separately. I've been working with them separately. So there's a animal expansion pack of a handful of animal cards with characteristics of particular animals in them. And then there's also the expansion pack of herbs and plants, which have elemental and keyword associations as well. It's a deck that you could definitely work with, I think, without the guidebook at all, but like, why would you? And there's a PDF version of the guidebook too, I believe. So if you don't like Lulu, you don't have to go and get that printed. But this deck is great, and there's so many cards. I think there's 80 something, or it might be even 100. There's a lot of cards in here. So The Oracle of Place by Kelly Fitzgerald has been my fave to work with all month, I think. And it looks really good with the Hollow Valley, I will say. Like, the color palette of this with the Oracle of Place, fantastic. So fantastic. The final deck that I've been working with this month a lot is my beloved Next World Tarot. I'm not going to get it out. Actually, everybody's seen this deck. And this is the small one. I've been using the big one. It's laid out up on my reading table. This is a deck that is like a friend. And sometimes this is a deck that I just like really, really need this deck for a while. And this has been one of those months, so I've been working with that one as well. That is my decks for April. Books. We're only at 23 minutes. This is going to be fucking long. Okay. Books. If you're still with me. Books that I've read this month. Finished this month. I finished The Explorer's Guide to Algonquin Park by Michael Runce. If you're not in Ontario, you may not know. This is a provincial park that is north of where I live. There's a beautiful loon picture. It is really beautiful there, and I like to visit it in the summer. It's too far for a day trip for us, but we would have to leave very early in the morning to make it a day trip. But it's great for a weekend or a week. And I had picked this up just thinking that it would help to plan a couple of ventures into the park. I did recently book what will be my 5-year anniversary trip. We're renting an Airbnb north of us near a lake. Going to go canoeing for a couple of days and just relax in the quiet, which will be great. Very close to here, not in the park, but very close. And so this really is good if you're going to want to go to this park. some of it is animal and plant information that's really interesting, and then the rest is kind of, it amalgamates all of the different brochures you can get all in one place, which is useful in terms of routes, like hiking routes, canoe routes, access points, photography points of interest, trails to go to see particular animals or plants that you're interested in. So it's a reference book, but I'm reading books about my local environment for my Druidry study for the first year candidate curriculum, and this was one of my books for that. So I actually read this cover to cover. I read 2 pagan portal books this month, one of which I liked and one of which I did not. I read Joanna Vanderhoven's The Awen Alone, Walking the Path of the Solitary Druid. I've read Joanna Vanderhoven's work before on Hedge Druidry, another one of her Pagan Portals books. And so I got this one as well as an ebook. You know, Pagan Portals books are very short, and I enjoyed The Awen Alone. It's quite introductory, I think, for someone who maybe is just coming to the concept of Awen or the very, very basics of Druidry. It's a good little brief introduction. So I enjoyed that one. I don't have a ton to say about it besides that. Joanna Vanderhoven's writing is very accessible. It's very clear. And it was a good kind of overview. Joanna Vanderhoven is associated with OBOD, the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. So that is the kind of flavor of revival Druidry that the book is written in. The second Pagan Portals book I read is a forthcoming one, and I unfortunately really did not love it at all. And that was Harmonia Saul's Magic for Hedge Witches. I was interested in this because I've got the Hedge Druidry book I plan to read, and so I figured, yeah, Magic for Hedge Witches, I'll read this one too. Thank you. I received an ARC for this book from NetGalleon, from the publishers, and this one didn't work for me. And I find the Pagan Portals books to be very, very inconsistent, I will say. Some of them, including this one, just need a really strong copy edit. There were just a lot of issues with it in that respect that made it a bit hard to read at times. I think some of it, you know, when you get an advanced copy, there are things about it that bugged me that I think are just kind of formatting issues with the ebook that I have no doubt will be fixed before the release. So I'm not going to kind of critique the book on those kinds of bases. But I did find that this particular one definitely had some language in it that is not inclusive, which I did not appreciate. You know, some cis-centrism, some culturally appropriative comments and things like this. And it just, I feel like it had a shocking amount of filler for a book that was only 100 pages. I've written my full review on Goodreads. I'll link my Goodreads below. You can check it out there. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So that one really didn't work for me, but the Awen Alone by Joanna Vanderhoven was good. That was my Pagan Portals reading for the month. I read actually 9 books this month, and that the only reason is because those 2 are very short. And this one is short too. My friend gifted me, my wonderful friend, saw this book in the bookstore, Spell Work for Self-Care, and was reminded of me, and so sent it to me in the mail. And I love my friend. If you're watching, I love you, and I think you're fantastic. So this is Spell Work for Self-Care, 40 Spells to Soothe the Spirit. A weird thing about this book is that it doesn't have an author's name on it. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. The listing for this book lists the publisher as the author. The illustrations are by Monica Ramos. That's in the copyright information. So Monica Ramos illustrated this book, but the text is copyright to the publishers and not to an individual, which I think is a bit unusual. The illustrations are very pretty, I think. And there's some diversity in the illustrations in terms of body shapes and that. It's a book that definitely is written presuming a woman identified reader. The reader is interpolated as a woman in several points. There are some really nice ideas in here. I appreciated the ways in which the book spoke to feminism in a fairly explicit way, in a gesturing towards intersectionality way, which I think is like not commonly done, and certainly not commonly done well in little introductory magic books like this. And so there are different spells in here. The chapters are spellwork basics, spells for protection, spells for wellness, love spells, spells for finance in the future, and spells for sovereignty. There are definitely a couple of things in here that I might do for sure, and I think that anyone is going to probably find something that they would like to do. The ingredients are pretty everyday, accessible things. Like, it's not full of it's not full of hard to find ingredients, which is nice. It's not overly particular about things like that. It has some good correspondence charts in it. It defines things like spell work in nice ways. I like that its definition of spell work emphasizes the work bit. Like, it's actually doing something. I really like that. It's definitely, I think, written for it might be written for a little bit younger of an audience than me. At one point, there's a spell that relates to like finding your first adult job. And I'm not a new adult, but I enjoyed it. You know, the only criticism I would have of this, I think, like, really is in some places, like, it's a little bit culturally pick and mix. Like things feel a little bit kind of superficially spoken to in a couple of places. You know, maybe veering slightly towards appropriative. It's not nearly as much so as I've seen in a lot of other kind of introductory books like this. And I think that it's very much in the spirit of maybe trying to include a lot of diverse traditions, not knowing who the reader is, right? So I can appreciate that. And I very much appreciate this gift from my friend, and I had made her some room spray and sent it back to her. So we got to swap some gifts, and that was a really nice thing this month. What else did I read? I read a debut novel. Thank you, NetGalley, for the advanced copy. It's coming out soon this year by Chelsea Abdullah, called The Stardust Thief. And this was a book including djinn and djinn magic, and it has a young-ish female protagonist who has a platonic friend relationship with a djinn. And in the story, trying to talk about it without giving too much away, in this kind of city that they live in, the world that they live in, humans and djinn have a very hostile relationship, and the kind of ruling families, rulers of the city are, they have like djinn hunting groups. And so it's, you know, the fact that she has this djinn friend, he is in disguise the whole time, pretty much. And they go on an adventure. And it's a trilogy. This is going to be 2 more books. I thought as a debut it was really, really good. I will read book 2 for sure. I thought that it was really well done. It felt original. My only kind of complaint about it, and this complaint is entirely about me and entirely not about the book, is that I feel like none of the characters were morally complicated, really. It was very kind of the hero and the antagonist, and it's really clear who's who, and there's not a lot of ambiguity there. That felt like a little tiny bit safe, but other than that, it was a good fun fantasy adventure, I thought. The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and I'm looking forward to reading the second one. It is an adult novel. Things I read are for the like basically exclusively. But I think that this is actually one that like people who are really into YA fantasy would probably like as well. The main characters, who are not djinn, because djinn are very long-lived, the main human characters are in their early 20s. And so, you know, I think there's crossover appeal there, for sure. I also read, thinking about tarot here, I read Samuel Delaney's Nova, and this book is the, I want to say, Hugo winner from 1968. Yeah. Very early in Samuel Delaney's long, prolific, ongoing career. I did read Samuel Delaney's memoir, one of them, fairly recently. And this book is a space opera adventure story following Captain Lork von Ray. And it's a quite, particularly for 1968, is a quite diverse cast of characters for a sci-fi space opera that did not happen very much in 1968. And so I really appreciate that. There are definitely aspects of this that read as very 1960s sci-fi. A couple of which I will say do not age well at all. Just one or two things. But overall, I really enjoyed this. But the reason that I think I might make a separate video about this is because tarot figures into this story quite prominently. It's used as a decision-making tool in the society that is represented here. And in several points in the book that I've bookmarked for later, they perform full readings. In one case, there's kind of a full Celtic cross with analysis included. And they talk about tarot and talk about where they think it might have come from and why they use it or what their deck is like and things like this. And just a brief quote that I'll share that's kind of fun to give a sense of where tarot is in this story. One of the characters, Caton, who's talking to another character called Mouse, after Mouse has expressed disbelief in tarot, basically, of a sort. This is fleshed out further in the book. Caton says, you've got some odd ideas, Mouse. Admittedly, they're fascinating. If someone had told me I'd be working in the same crew today in the 32nd century with somebody who could honestly be skeptical about tarot, I don't think I would have believed it. So the one who's kind of skeptical, in a sense, whose skepticism is actually quite tempered once they have the conversation, the one who's skeptical about the tarot is the one who stands out in the book, which I thought was quite interesting. And Samuel Delaney thanks some other folks in his acknowledgments for kind of helping him with the tarot knowledge in the book. There's definitely, been some research that goes into how tarot is represented here, and I appreciate that. There's also a historic, vintage now, wildly out of print tarot that is associated with this book. I'm gonna be on the hunt for that. I've never seen one for sale, but I'd be very interested to find that. So that's Samuel Delaney's Nova. It was fun. It was really fun. With the caveat, it's from the 60s, but it was really, really fun. I really enjoyed this. Then I had 3 books, all of which I read for ebooks, to read for my TBR cards by Jessie at Bowties and Books. And for April, I got 3 cards, and I decided to read 3 different books for the 3 different cards. And I got A Book You're Unsure About. I got Read a Book by an Indigenous Author. And I got Spoonie, Read a Book with a Mentally and or Physically Disabled Protagonist. So, for those 3 books, A Book That You're Unsure About, I just went with a genre that I'm unsure about and a genre that I don't particularly like. And I read a edited collection edited by Jonathan Strahan called Someone in Time, Tales of Time-Crossed Romance. It was an advanced copy, thank you publisher, coming out shortly. And this one, Someone in Time, is a bunch of short stories, all by different authors, all involving romance and all involving time travel. Romance is probably the last pick of a genre that I'm ever going to go for. Not that I don't, read books with romantic plot lines within them, but a romance book, no. But it was good. It was really good. Overall, inevitably, short stories, different authors. Some of them are going to be more stories that I would like than others. But overall, in terms of a collection, I thought it was well edited. I thought it was well done. They really range in terms of, tone. Like some are much funnier, and then some are much more kind of philosophical, contemplative, and a couple of them are just like really tragic. So it's quite all over the place in that respect, but it felt sufficiently cohesive while being sufficiently varied, which is, I think, a hard balance to hit with an anthology. So I was unsure about it because it was romance, but it turned out pretty well. For a book by an Indigenous author, I got quite a few suggestions, and I have one book actually on my book stack of joy. Side comment, I've cheated. I cheated on my book stack of joy this month. Hard. The stack might have grown without Finn being done, but that's neither here nor there. Nobody is surprised. Anyway, I had a thought of what I was going to read for this, which was a non-fiction book, which I will read at some point. A non-fiction by an author who I've read before, who is an Indigenous author, whose book is sitting on my pile in the living room to read. But then I was chatting with Krista, Auntie Kay's Tarot, who mentioned that Drew Hayden Taylor, who's an Indigenous author from very close to where I live, actually, has a collection of short Indigenous science fiction stories. Take Us to Your Chief. And so that is what I picked for this. As soon as Krista mentioned it, I was like, yep, that's the one. So I got Take Us to Your Chief and Other Stories on my e-reader, and I read it in the course of a couple of days. There are, I think, 8 stories in there. And Drew Hayden Taylor is quite a well-known author, I think. And I hadn't read his work before, and most of his work is not science fiction. But he has this great collection. And he talks in the introduction about the importance of the kind of futurity of science fiction, and, that Indigenous literature is not just one thing, and that Indigenous identity and lived experiences are not just one thing. And so, exploring this different genre, and having tried a couple of times to get an anthology to come together, and having barriers to that, and so writing all of these short stories himself. And each short story kind of has a different sci-fi trope in it, or sometimes multiple, that are familiar. So like either kind of an artificial intelligence, or an alternate dimension, or a first contact, or a kind of conspiracy cover-up, to talking objects, like different kind of science fictional premises, but with very predominantly Indigenous casts of characters, and with an Indigenous kind of angle on the messages of the stories and the settings of the stories. And it was really, really good. Highly, highly recommend for the sci-fi enthusiasts. Take Us to Your Chief and Other Stories by Drew Hayden Taylor for a short story. It's a fairly quick read. It was really good, really fun. I really enjoyed that. And then the last one that I'll mention for reading a book with a mentally or physically disabled protagonist, I read Noor by Nnedi Okorafor. Nnedi Okorafor is an African futurist author who I've read before. I've talked about her Binti trilogy before on this channel, which I really, really, really like. I've read her novel Lagoon, which I also liked. She's written quite a lot. And Noor had come out maybe last year. It's fairly recent. It's a short novel. I did get it on my e-reader. The hardback book, though, of Noor the cover is beautiful. So go and Google it. I don't know how to put the picture here. That's what I need to learn, is how to put the picture beside me, but I don't know how to do that. Not like I edit much anyway. So I read Noor by Nnedi Okorafor, and this book follows a character who is a multiple amputee who utilizes prosthetic devices, several prosthetic devices, and so that's why it would qualify here for physically disabled protagonist. And it's a fairly short novel. I can't really say anything about the plot without giving a whole lot away. I will say that the main character faces discrimination and violence because of her difference and her differences, and her use of multiple prosthetics, many very visible prosthetics. She is, marginalized is an understatement. She experiences hate-motivated violence, ableist hate-motivated violence at the beginning of the book. And yeah, it's an interesting one. I enjoyed it. It's a quick read. I really can't say much about it without just giving a ton away. But I liked the main character's internal monologue a lot. And I thought it was an interesting science fiction story. And I really liked Nnedi Okorafor's work in general. And it had kind of been on my list. So I was happy to read that. That is the 9 books I read this month. Nobody's still watching at this point, let's be real. I'm going to just say for May, I'm not going to pick any new TBR cards. And the reason that I'm not going to pick any new TBR cards for May is because for May, I am going to participate in Asian Readathon 2022, which is hosted by withcindy here on YouTube. And so for Asian Readathon, the idea is, of course, to read books by Asian authors featuring Asian characters, though certainly you could read nonfiction as well, I think, for at least some of the prompts. There are 5 prompts, and the idea is that any assortment of books that you pick for Asian Readathon, say you choose maybe 3 books to satisfy the 5 prompts, which I think is about where I'm landing, that you would pick books by authors of different Asian ethnicities to celebrate the diversity of Asian communities. So I'm really excited about Asian Readathon. I've already bought a book. I bought a recently published book of Chinese science fiction short stories in translation called The Way Spring Arrives, that I'm really excited about, that is entirely women and non-binary translators who worked on the project. So I'm excited about that, and to find some books to fit the other prompts. I've already found a few. I will maybe link below Asian Readathon announcement video from withcindy, so if you want to join in, you can. And maybe this will be the month that I make a reading blog. We'll see. I'm excited for all the reading for May. Anyway, getting towards the end, I promise. The animal of the month was a little bit interesting this month because I ended up making a real animal connection to an animal that was not the animal of the month. I'm going to make a video about that because that needs its own discussion. I have a new animal friend, like spiritually speaking, that has come through this month, but that's going to be its own video. The animal of the month, though, is Raven, and this is, of course, the Druid Animal Oracle. And Raven is one that does live in Ontario, or live in much of Ontario anyway, live much of Ontario year-round. Ravens are rare in bird, in the realm of birds, in that they not only do they live their entire life in pairs, which some birds do and many birds don't, but they also live their entire life in pairs in one place. So they will nest and they will stay in the same kind of little radius of territory, or the same area for their entire lives. So something interesting about Raven is that if you see, say a pair of ravens, you may be seeing the same pair all the time because they will stay where they are. In the Druid Animal Oracle, the keywords associated with Raven are healing, initiation, and protection. They are thought to be associated with the resolution of opposites. And Raven is associated in a lot of contexts, I think, like seeing a raven is kind of like a warning, or an omen of something that may not be positive. But the guidebook talks about this in terms of people being warned, in advance of something like an attack, right? And in this sense, like a warning is a good thing to have. And according to the guidebook for this, ravens and their flight patterns were something utilized for divination by ancient druids, which is interesting. I'm not sure what the citation is for that, but I thought it was an interesting thing anyway. Raven is really smart. Raven is a really, really smart animal who does a lot of things that I think sometimes get thought of as being only traits of humans, or maybe aren't really thought of as animal traits. I watched a fantastic video that is easy to find on YouTube if you're interested in this, for quite a few minutes going on of these two ravens trying to trick each other so that one didn't find the other one's food. So the raven would make fake hiding places and like look over at the other raven and kind of then exaggeratedly like pretend to hide the food, but not really like in the place, and make sure that the other raven saw him doing that, and then would go somewhere else and see if the other raven fell for it. Like they mess with each other in really interesting ways, which I enjoyed, and try to kind of trick each other with these kind of decoys and distractions, which is interesting. I didn't know either that ravens really mimic a lot of sounds. I know like some birds really, as a lyrebird I think does that too, really mimic a lot of other birds, which is interesting, and other sounds that are not birds as well. So you may be hearing a raven without knowing it. And something about ravens I think that people might not know, and this is what I'll end with because I like something that's surprising. I think people know that ravens are smart, right? People know that ravens are really intelligent in ways that humans recognize as intelligent, because of course, like which animals are smart or not that's filtered through what humans think intelligence is. There's a little side 5-minute rant for you. But they're also very playful, and they seem to, fly around and dive and engage with each other in ways that are entirely playful. Like the adults do this. Like for a lot of animals, playing is about learning skills, right? Like playing with young is about learning skills, but adult ravens play with each other, which I think is fantastic. And so this animal that has to do with providing warnings and is, associated, I think, pretty seriously with, with kind of spiritual messages and things like this, for all its intelligence, really also loves rolling around and flying in weird patterns just because it's fun. And so I get from Raven that reminder, not to get too serious. And that was an unexpected thing about Raven, so I appreciated that. Now, with putting the animals that I've already had aside, I will shuffle the remaining Druid Animal Oracle, and then I swear this video is going to be over. So, an animal for May to explore. Horse. I've had horse as an animal to explore before, but this is a different deck. I'm keen to see what Druid Animal Oracle in particular leads me to with respect to horse. So I will have something to share about horse in the end of May, and I will also have this other surprise animal content for you later this month as well. Nobody's still here. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to go outside and do some gardening. I wish everybody a great day, and I'll see y'all again soon.